All right, welcome to the Smallbrain Podcast. Today, our guest is Thomas Ryan, head of Smallbrain Records. So, Thomas, what's up?
Not much. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, so basically, how about you tell us a little bit about yourself, about the history behind Smallbrain Records, and yeah, we'll go from there.
All right, yeah. So I've been making music for probably more seriously in the last 4 years, but I've been playing piano ever since I was as long as I can remember, so pretty little.
Yeah.
Um, and I guess I grew up listening to like whatever my dad had on, which usually was either the Beatles or Aphex Twin. Pretty interesting little mix. Um, and then that kind of progressed. I wasn't too interested in Aphex Twin and all that growing up, but around when I was probably 13 at max, maybe 11 or so, I started listening to like electronic music and got into Aphex Twin right away. And pretty much ever since then, I've loved more experimental electronic music and very much so like classical music as well, which
Okay.
has really led to what my musical style is now.
Yeah, but how did it all translate into Smallbrain Records?
Well, my dad founded it back in like 1993, and then he did stuff with it, and then it kind of died down when he started. Well, once he had me, and then it was just completely silent. And then I started managing it myself closer to 20, 2016. Started really taking hold of it, and I redesigned the webpage in 2015 or so, and then I guess we met you guys and stuff and have been trying to make consistent releases.
Yeah, so it appears that despite your relatively young age, you seem to have a pretty clear vision and goals for Small Brain and for you as an artist and as a person in more general. So how come how where did this motivation come from? Where how did you pick up on the fact that maybe this is something I would want to really put my soul into that, you know?
Yeah, good question. I guess it kind of started with the fact that I started making or I started using like Ableton and those stuff on my dad's computers in Lansing when I was, I don't know, I don't want to say too young, but six, the youngest or so,
Yeah.
because we didn't really have that much other stuff. My dad was really into music, so I just messed around. Nothing big, but it was made it so it was more familiar. And then as I got older, I always kind of used music stuff and naturally had played piano now for 16 years of piano. So music's always been close to a secondary or primary language for what I've always done. So when I was older and I started doing stuff, I guess it just was like, all right, I'm decently good at this. And I never really had trouble expressing what I wanted to the music to sound like. So I guess one day I was just like, all right, well, let's do music.
Yeah, but how did it translate into let's do music label, I guess the label maybe was just here around and
Yeah,
because you could be doing music and maybe look to be signed on some other label and uh, how did it translate into making your and
I
I'm
guess.
really like it's really impressive because it's not easy to have a vision. It's something that you tend to develop with time and experience, and you seem to have you know ambition and that vision. And so how did it translate from making music to actually wanting to be more active, I guess, into finding artists and try to put some music out there, including yourself, including your own.
Yeah, for sure. I think what it would be, honestly, is there was a point, I think maybe 2 years ago, probably, where I was like, all right, I've got this music, and the first one I released, I mean, I never forgot about Smallbrain Records. I released it. And I was like, all right, yeah, we'll just put it out under Smallbrain Records. And because it was as simple as typing in record label on the distribution service. So then I guess it kind of progressed from there. And I was thinking, all right, well, what are these other labels? And I was like, all right, why am I looking for a label? I make music, but it's not just my music, because ever since I was releasing, I was working with my friend Kyle, working with his music. He was always over. Like, he's been at my house every weekend almost for the last 3 years consistently,
Yeah.
making music. And the first day he came over, we were working on our joint band deformed together. So it's always been a mixture of other people. And when we started thinking about record labels, it just seemed natural to start our own, because honestly, I mean, I've been a fan of like Warp for a long time, but in recent years, I hate to say that I've been like let down, but my vision of what I thought Warp was completely wrong with what they're doing now. It didn't line up. They're Warp and they can do whatever they want, but
Yeah.
it felt like, all right, well, I'll just start my own and do exactly what I want with the music around it.
That's an interesting thing, actually. That's an interesting take, because from my perspective, and I'm not like, I know about Warp Records. I'm not that familiar with what they do in like more on a more day-to-day release and that kind of stuff, like all the smaller artists. Um, I don't know. What do you think happens?
Well, I don't think they did anything wrong, but the thing is, they don't really have smaller artists. Like, in my opinion, well,
Oh,
to me, in my mind, like when someone says they're a Warp artist, it's like, oh, okay, you've made it, you know?
yeah,
So when they have, I don't know, maybe that's why I was detracted from it. When they say, like, when someone says, oh, I'm a Warp artist, I think, oh, okay, so you're as good as Aphex Twin. I should listen to your, I'll naturally go and listen to your music and like it, because when someone says, oh yeah, it's with Warp, I used, like, back in a while ago, I would have bought the album, downloaded the song, binge listened to it until I loved it. But now with the newer stuff, it doesn't line up with my taste. Which
oh,
it's great. It's great music, but I was like not phased by the releases. So it
hmm
was like, all right, well, I don't really know what Warp stands for. So when they have a new release now, I'm not like, boom, I'm gonna go buy it.
yeah,
So
yeah, and that stuff kind of happens, and even your own tastes kind of evolve over time, and yeah, no, but how, like, it still feels to me like Warps is a huge influence on how you see Smallbrain, and what are the kind of things that they do that you want to maybe emulate and try to inspire to inspire yourself from.
well, I mean, to just be known as a vision. Like, when I think of Warp Records, I think of the owner. Like, I think, all
Yeah.
right, this is the combined vision and musical taste of the owner, because a label, all it is, it's saying, all right, I associate with this guy, with these guys' taste of music. These guys have said my music's worth putting their name on. So I guess when I want people to think of is, when I think of Smallbrain, is the same as someone's recommendation on music, you know?
Yeah.
And I'd like to think that my taste of music is diverse enough and trusted enough that that will happen, because I mean, I don't know, when I think of a record label, I think of what people look up to tell them what's cool in music.
Yeah, it reminds me, like, before the internet and everything, and I know I always ramble a lot about how before the internet, but yeah, but I think it's important, my generation to talk a lot about life before the internet, because it's something that you human beings won't ever experience, and we used to have that one or two friends who knew about music, but since you couldn't, at best you would buy a magazine and you would have a sampler CD, a few tracks, and then you would have to go to the CD shop or cassette shop back in the 80s even. And how do you, like, I guess where I'm getting at is, when you were born in the internet era, like, what is the process behind learning about new music, and how do you, because I'm guessing your father might have had a huge influence also, especially in your younger age. But you seem to have, very like wide tastes from for all kinds of styles of music. And I'm wondering, how did you go about, learning about music, the new, new artists, new genres? I guess you could say warp, but it's probably not only that, right?
Oh yeah, for sure. No, I listen to. It's not just Warp, but I would say probably most of it is a good chunk of it's probably from my family and friends, mainly my dad. What he's told me, like growing up listening to, like for example, some of the ones that when I think of when I lived in Lansing, I think of listening to the White Stripe, Beck, at one song, um, and a good amount of the Beatles, that kind of stuff. And then I guess I picked my favorites of those or stuff I thought was interesting, and I would come back to them time and time. Like Radiohead is a big one to me. That's something I
Yeah,
always end up coming back to. And from
that's deep.
Radiohead, oh yeah, their stuff's absolutely amazing. I read it. I read into artists. So I'll take someone I really appreciate, like Tom York specifically, or Johnny Greenwood, and I stalk them through the internet, find out who their influences are, who they think's cool, and I take little bits of it. Like if Tom York might make a recommendation or a comment on something, I'll look into it, and if I like it, I'll save it, or if not, I'll toss it out. And then I read into their past and stuff, and all right, I'll take the hints from that I think fit with me, and then I guess so. I guess my taste is the taste of all my favorite artists combined, who they say is best, and if I don't like it, I just ignore it. But I guess
That's a
it's
good
just
way.
it just spreads itself out, and then a big one also is other people's recommendations that I appreciate, like
Mhm.
for example, my dad or you, yeah, or like Martin Bolton, who I've been talking to. If he recommends a song or something, I'll check it out, and I won't just if I don't like it, I won't just skip it. I'll listen to it a good few times till I really know if I like it or if I just was bothered with that sound at that current time.
Yeah. Yeah, often I realize like somebody gives me a recommendation about an artist or a song or some kind of music, and it happens sometimes. I just feel like I'm not ready for that right now, so I
Hmm.
put it on the side somewhere, and I may go back to it.
Yeah, for
Maybe
sure.
sometimes even years later. And but what's the kind of music that you like? A few silly questions, but what's the genre of music you would be the most ashamed to admit that you like, and what's the genre of music that you should listen more of it?
Most ashamed of like, oh, that's tough.
Like I
Um,
really like old school country music.
oh yeah, that stuff's great. Um, I would probably say that's tough. Um,
Gangster rap.
well, I don't know. I guess I'm not really ashamed of any of the music I listen to.
Maybe not ashamed, but you wouldn't admit it to someone you meet for the first time, and now I'm asking you on the internet to admit to the whole
uh,
world. You know.
yeah, that's true. I guess part of it is if I don't feel comfortable admitting it, I try not to listen to it because
Yeah.
um, I try to keep my music taste like groomed, I guess. So if I want to not like something, I won't listen to it too much, or I'll make sure I don't like it, or I will if I think, oh yeah. I mean, for the most part,
You
I've
seem
never,
pretty open though.
yeah, true. I guess when like 4 years ago or something, I was really into like one mainstream pop song, but that was years ago. So and it's
Sometimes they are really good though.
yeah,
Some.
no, it was great. I still would. I don't. I like it, but I haven't listened to it since then. But like I would still say, oh yeah, it's a good song.
Like, do you remember? I think it was Britney Spears, "Toxic."
Oh yes, I remember that one.
Like the production on that. That's solid. That's
Yeah, and
quite original, and
I think for the most
yeah.
I think for the most part, though, like that normal pop music does actually have pretty great production value because of the fact that it's pop music. So they have so much money and so much connections to be able to get the best people
Yeah,
to work with them.
yeah. And I don't remember who did that song, but it was I don't know if it was Timbaland or someone like that, or maybe Pharrell, or I don't know, but some big name I think worked on that song. I should look it up, but I'm lazy. So. And what's the kind of music that you should maybe you believe you may not listen to enough of?
Probably, it's tough. Probably mainstream rap, honestly, because there's got to be something to it that makes it popular.
Huh?
Like,
That's
the stuff that people say like Juice World and like Lil Pump and stuff. I mean, I hate their music they release, but I probably should muscle through and listen to all of it just because there's got to be something to it.
uh, some of it must be good.
Yeah, just something. Even if
I
it's
think
not
some of
good,
it
there's
is.
there's got to be something that people are attracted to, and I want to
Because
figure out what it is.
the thing with mainstream rap, like since I'm in France, so I'm often exposed to mainstream French rap, and
Hmm.
it's basically always the same track. Like they use the four chords of pop music all the time,
Yeah,
like all the time, like literally all the time. This is the honest. So it always stops me from appreciating, and like I don't have anything like against those four chords, in this specific chord progression, and I can certainly, name you a few songs that use that progression and are great songs. But like mainstream rap, at least in French mainstream rap, it's so obvious that it doesn't seem like they put much effort into
no,
actually making
that's
music.
what I'm so interested in as well because like there are these. No, I'm not gonna bad talk local artists. There is this feeling about like the whole mumble rap stuff. It just feels so underproduced and stuff
Yeah,
that like it's like okay, there's that, and then there's Aphex Twin who spends maybe not, but who his techniques seem way more metered out. He gets it mastered and stuff, and
yeah,
just total meticulous. And then there's this stuff that like just sounds like it was made in 10 minutes in GarageBand that you've heard a million
yeah.
times. That's making millions of dollars. It's like, what's the secret, you know?
That's actually a question I've been wrestling with because it would be easy to hate on these people, but the way I see it right now is I'm happy for people who are successful like that. I'm happy for them, and I'm sure it's a way for them to make a living, to have fun, to do something that is still like even the most underproduced kind of sugary pop song. Like we have to understand, we have to realize that it still reaches, like I always take this example in a club, in a very pop music club like EDM, that kind of stuff. You have regular people who have everyday jobs and everyday troubles, and they go to this place and they behave in a way that they wouldn't ever behave out in the outside world, and that's because of the music. So it has some value, because it
Yeah. And
does still work as music item. It's
I
still
mean, I think part of it, in my opinion, it, is that it's similar to like cheap beer, like Budweiser. It's easy to drink, it's easy to buy, and it's easy to listen to.
yeah,
You
like
don't
fast.
have to have, yeah, like someone could go in who doesn't appreciate music very much or doesn't listen to like deep music and just kind of whatever, could go in, turn it on, and listen to it, and it's like, oh, okay, yeah, I don't have to worry about working on listening to it. I mean, honestly, I think most
It's
people would
practical,
admit. I think
easy.
yeah, and I think most people would admit that they do like pop music. I mean, when I hear it come on, I don't hate it. It's just it's so easy to listen to, but it's
Yeah,
like, all right, this doesn't. It's like it would be like doing a kid's coloring book. It's easy,
yeah,
but like, why?
yeah. I don't know because I don't really connect with it, with like probably some of it. But the thing is, just like fast food, just if you eat fast food, I guess it gives you nutrition, maybe not good nutrition, but it keeps you alive, and it's practical and easy, and it does have some use.
Hmm.
And the same with music, although music is not about keeping you alive, with something in its stomach, but it's about having that connection with that other part of yourself, the deeper part. And even, when you go to a EDM club, I don't know if you have EDM clubs over there. 'Cause, yeah, whatever. But if you go to a place like that, you see regular people who are not sensitive to music, all that much, but they still, have this connection, and they have fun, and they dance, and they move around, and they make friends, they make up, and all that stuff. And so just as fast food, it's useful as it gives you something that you need to go on,
Yeah,
and
and I think
maybe it's
my
not
biggest
good for you. I don't know.
yeah, I think my biggest argument for it is that like it's existed forever, even back when there was like classical music. There was still the stuff that people would call like pop music. It
Yeah.
exists for a reason, um, and it's people who appreciate it and like it and love it. That's great, but that's not what I'm about. I like to do. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, if you have with yourself a relationship with music, I guess, um, you're looking to, when you hear a piece of music, you're looking for that connection because
Hmm.
you know it's there, because you're familiar with that connection, you're familiar with the feeling, and you look for it. And if you listen to pop music, you may look for it, you may find some of it in some songs, but for the most part, it seems rather like not that deep of a connection. You know,
Hmm.
it still goes
Yeah.
deeper than pragmatic reality, but
Hmm.
it's not that deep. And but I guess it's the same. Like some people, they just want to live their life and have a job, buy a home, and and they're happy with it. And I used to be to criticize these people because I couldn't understand, because I don't see life for myself like that. But at the same time, like, you have to recognize that, you know everybody finds their place in the world in a very unique way, and some people, like, you can know some people who are very happy with the job, and maybe they don't like the job, but they're happy they can provide for their family, raise their kids and stuff like that. And it's I realized with time that it's tough to judge and to say, oh, it's not a good way to live your life, because I don't see it that way.
Hmm.
It's more likely that maybe, like, feels like sometimes I wish I would see it that way because it seems easier,
Yeah.
and, you know and less risky. And,
True.
I guess you can't really blame, people who just want to live their life and be happy, and, raise a family, and that's meaningful stuff. And they don't it's the same with music. Like, people just enjoy some music, they enjoy going to the club and dancing a little bit, and
Hmm.
maybe they don't care about, very deep, like, microtonal, that kind of stuff, polyrhythmic and symphony of abstract, concrete, underground, the kind of stuff that, maybe you like, and I like too. And yeah, but I guess that transpires into Smallbrain, and it cannot be easy to decide. All right, this is what I'm gonna do. Um, it seems to me like you're not one to compromise on music, and um, I have a little bit experience with other labels, and it always seemed to me like one of the reason I think I really like Smallbrain Records is because the point is not to make money,
Hmm.
but it's, um, first and foremost, to put great music out there.
Oh yeah,
And
100%.
it, of course, it will make everything a little bit harder, because it's It's more difficult to sell more. Like Aphex Twin, most people probably don't know his name.
Hmm.
Even
Oh yeah,
some
for sure.
people aren't, some kind of music, and like someone who'd be really into jazz may not know about Aphex Twin, you know.
Yeah,
So,
definitely.
or they may, who knows? And I guess where I'm going at it, where I'm going is that it's I don't really believe in pop music that much anymore.
True.
Like
Yeah.
it seems to me like it will always have a public and an audience, and for
Hmm.
sure. But with the rise of internet, people are more and more accustomed to different things that may maybe fit them a little bit better.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So,
And hmm,
like I'm really into niche markets
mhm.
when it comes to business, because with the internet, even a niche, it may mean you may still reach 1 million people worldwide, even
Yeah,
in
no,
small, you
definitely.
know.
Hmm.
And this is why, like, I think Smallbrain, it's definitely modern in that sense that um, it appeals to some sort of niche, but it still means, because of the reach of the internet, it still means that it may very well reach 1 million or even a few million people. And I think that's a great position to be in right now.
Yeah, for sure.
You're young, you have ambition, and you don't seem to have that many people around you to tell you what is not possible. You know.
Yeah, true. I would. Yeah, definitely.
So yeah, what do you think will be next for Small Brain, like 2019, 2020? I see Small Brain next year, in 5 years, 10 years.
Hmm. Well,
You want to cover now?
probably. Um, that's tough. You mean like in what sense?
Mm, when it comes to the artist roster, the music.
Oh, okay. So I'm hoping that by then we have some artists that are consistently releasing stuff and have a little bit more following to them because it's hard to build momentum fast. It's really slow. Like we've got a, a it seems to be about 100 150 people which consistently view stuff, download stuff, or like the posts we do. And even if it's not like interact but just user engagement, we seem to
Yeah.
have pretty stable, which has slowly been building.
Hmm.
And that number still increases more. But I think the biggest thing that I really want to start doing is a yearly vinyl release of
Yeah.
some sort, like a compilation, plus like small bar music, best new picks and new music finds and things like that.
Yeah, I was wondering, like, what's with young people and vinyl and cassette tape and that kind of stuff? Because I used to I grew up with cassette, and they were really, really tedious to use, and you have to rewind and you have to turn the tape, and you know, I've been wondering, like, there seems to be a comeback, but maybe I'm too old to get it. Like,
I
what's this?
mean,
I
that's
understand
that's
vinyl a little bit
yeah, the
more.
vinyl. I think the vinyl only because it's a standard for music release, and I don't think that'll ever go away. But I think with cassettes, like for example, I bought the Aphex Twin Collapse cassette. I've never opened it. I
Yeah.
have it sitting on my bookshelf. Um, I think the part of it is that it's like I don't really know. It's something that kind of hasn't gone away, even though it's stupid and it sounds horrible.
Yeah.
Like when we issue our cassettes through Smallbrain, we reuse older cassettes, which has more meaning without a doubt than just helping the environment.
Yeah.
Um, it really shows that because I mean, a brand new cassette recorded over sounds okay, but I mean, it'll never sound great because it's just a cassette. Maybe they will if you do it right, but I think it's more the sentimental meaning behind them.
Yeah.
And when I take an older cassette and re-record over it, I don't know, there's something symbolic about that. Don't you think? Like just taking some amount of music that was, because I only take them from like secondhand charity shops and stuff, and then I just repurpose them into a new poem. It just feels cool.
Like I'm just thinking out loud, trying to find a theory about why. But it seems to me like when you listen to cassettes, there's a commitment to the music, because you cannot easily go to the next track or that kind of stuff. So you kind of press play, and you have to let the music, to allow the music to play.
Yeah. And I think it's the same with recording. Like when you hear a cassette, or with the internet, you could kind of save. You could hit download and boom, it's done, and then you could skip around. But with a cassette, when you record it, you have to record it at that speed, going from start to finish in one go, and you have to commit to the recording. And like when I was recording a mixtape for my girlfriend, it would record, like I would set it to record and then just go to sleep. And it would have to play it out, or I would sit there throughout the entire thing, making sure that it went all the way through. And that's a time commitment as well. So by doing them all by hand, it really puts that, I recorded this entire cassette album, put a label on it, and sent it to you.
Yeah. Yeah, and it really means, like, there's the idea of time that you mentioned. It really sparks a few ideas in my head right now, because I guess it's obvious, but it's obvious to the point that maybe we don't think about it that much. But music has a lot to do with time. Whether it's the length of a song, or the tempo, or the bars and stuff like that. It's a very important dimension of music. And
and especially if you think about the fact that, like, for example, one of my last songs, I think it was pretty short. My songs are usually kind of small, but I think it took somewhere close to like 3 months just to get like a minute and a half. And it's like, all right, well,
what's the process behind that?
That depends. Like, I've always had this theory of like starving myself for music, not with the food, but no music at all. Like just not listen to anything, and then hoping something will spontaneously appear in, like, just when I'm sitting around or messing with a keyboard or something, which I've never been able to commit to because it's so hard. I feel like I'm going crazy if I don't listen to music, like at least once every hour and a half, I'll go crazy. I have to have something. So to me, and that does work, especially short term. I was in I was in New Orleans, and I was sitting around in a hotel. I should have been outside in the sun, but I was sitting in the hotel room, and I was like, all right, I want to do some music. So I turned off all my Apple Music and stuff, and I just kind of sat around, just worked on the record label website, and I was just like mad, fidgeting, going crazy because I didn't have any music on. And I just whipped up Ableton, and I was like, boom, and I started making a song, and it was just like, it just happened, which is pretty rare for me nowadays. Or I guess it's hard to just have genuine inspiration, but it kind of forced myself to dig out my inspiration that was sitting in me by being depraved of having music on.
And how do you decide, like, whether it's a melody or a beat, or how do you decide, like, how do you know, oh, this is good, this is something I want to dig into?
Most of the time, I would say that the stuff that I make is usually pretty good. That sounds so pretentious. It's usually like, I make something, and then I save it, and then if I feel like progressing with it, I'll progress with it, or I'll start something new and then save it once I get run out of stuff, and then I can come back, pull from these, or I'll think, that's really cool, it's hard to work with. And usually when I run into something that's like, this is really hard to work on, that's a sign to me that, oh, all right, that means I should finish it. Like, I had one where I was only working with my cat, who's right here with me, actually. I pick her up and she makes this squeaking, squealing noise because she doesn't like to be held. And I sampled it with my phone. And I was like, all right, I'm going to make a song out of that. And it was, the waveform of her squeak was so weird that it was really hard to turn into a synthesizer. But I was like, all right, that means I should definitely turn it into a synthesizer. So I turned it into one using like a sampler, and it was really, really tough to work on because it didn't have any harmonics to it really. I had to manipulate it pretty hard, and the drum line just didn't sit. And I worked on it for months, I think 3 or so months, and then all of a sudden one night I had like maybe a minute and 10 done. This was for a release for Detroit Underground actually, and I sent it out to Kuro, who runs that, and he was like, "Yeah, it's great. It's only a minute." And I was just like, yeah, that's the short version." Even though it was like all I had, and I was like, "Yeah, I'll make it longer." So I opened it up and I turned it into like 2 minutes, and it ended up being really good, and it didn't repeat, but I don't know. Then it felt like I was cheating, and I just whipped it up. But every time I listen to it, it's like, that's pretty good, which is kind of
Yeah,
weird.
maybe have it loop and run for 6 or 10 minutes.
Yeah, I hate looping. I try to avoid it at all costs in my music. Um,
Also,
I just don't do like in Ableton especially. They have the project view and then like the flow view, like live view. I try to compose everything in live view without looping as much as I can.
yeah.
And then I put it into project view, and then I usually my songs will be composed as follows. I'll get like a MIDI keyboard or one of my analog synths, and then I'll start recording, and I'll just play a real long melody, which is the entire length of the track, and then I'll fill in the rest. That, or I'll make a massive drum line that progresses throughout a song with nothing else, and then I'll add a melody on top of it. But I usually record start to finish the entire song without like the first bit, the second part, the harmony and stuff. It'll just be one long take.
Right. I try that. Sometimes I can do that, but most of the time I just fail.
That's usually all I can do. Like, when I try to use live view to make some type of loop type track, I'll end up making something that's pretty good, but I never know how to turn it into a progressed song. But when I go up to or when I play my keyboards or something, I'm so used to having my hands on the keys and hearing, like I can hear what's exactly going to come out as it's coming out, and I can just play an entire song in one sitting without having most premeditation based on the composition. I usually have like a theme or idea or an aesthetic, but I'll sit down and I'll record it, and then usually it's good on the first take.
Oh. Yeah, I used to record, live instruments. Like I used to have a Rhodes, a guitar, and stuff like that. So you cannot really program in MIDI.
Mm-hmm.
I used to do music a little bit more like that, like a band. You play one
Mm-hmm.
part, then you play the other. But I guess maybe I come from the same spot, but I went into the loop when I started to compose hip hop,
Mm-hmm.
and like right now, like there's something about the loop. I think there's something that's
Well, I think pop music, especially the stuff you hear now with the rhythms of like da, 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 like that kind of super generic trap beats and stuff, that
yeah.
killed the loop in my opinion, because it's looping, and it's so obvious. And it's like, all right, your entire song could be a loop.
Yeah,
Um,
but at the same time, you can listen to old school like DJ Food break beats
oh, for
stuff
sure.
from the 90s, and it's a loop for 3, 4, 5 minutes. Today I was listening to some DJ Crush. I don't know if you know
Hmm.
about him. And I was listening to some of his old school instrumental work, and it's, well, back then they didn't really have much options to make music. You had a sampler, you could loop things, and that was that. And they kind of found like a way to extract the most meaning of a short piece of music and have it run over and over again. It creates complete like landscapes, soundscapes with just that one small loop, and it's a little bit the same well, it's not the same, but it's comparable with some techno kind of music, like very repetitive music, and it has some property for sure. But I'm not
Well,
sure.
I think the difference with DJ Food and all of them is that looping was new and it was hard. Like the stuff that you hear then, that was either it was sampled on an early sampler or it was looped by hand by turning the vinyl back,
Yeah,
which is like, okay, you clearly put lots of thought into that exact loop point on that exact vinyl record on that turntable that you've meticulously maintained. Whereas now I could probably do it maybe I bet if you give me 20 seconds, if I had Ableton pre-opened, I could make a trap beat that loops and that's it. It's like the difference between sorting through a bunch of stuff and finding just the right 5 seconds of loop time that you're going to slice everything else out of
yeah.
versus popping something open and clicking your mouse maybe 16 times.
But I guess, sorry, I'm yawning. I guess like in the early 90s, you also had to kind of dig for records,
Mm-hmm.
really look for the best kind of loop, the best small part of a record that you can find that you could loop, and I think the process right now still does exist. There are still people digging
Oh
into that,
yeah.
using turntables
And I think they deserve all of that. Like there
yeah,
are I don't have anything against looping. In my own personal music, I try to avoid just because I know how easy it is. But like
yeah,
when I hear looping, for example, Daft Punk Around the World, that's the whole song is the most repetitive thing I can think of, but it's great. It's so good.
yeah. But
Um,
what most people don't realize is, uh, was it Around the World? I don't know which. I don't remember exactly which album, but the album with Daft Punk on it is like, I think it was re-released in the late 90s, but it actually dates from the early, like, first half of the 90s, if I remember right.
yeah.
I was in high school, and they had this pub where we used to go, and the owner's son, he used to love like house music, early house music, and he used, like, the first time I listened to Daft Punk and that kind of music, it was in that pub, and it was maybe in the mid 90s.
Mhm.
So I don't remember. It's been a while. And yeah,
Yeah.
Around the World, like this like the first couple of albums. I still like their music, but I think when musicians are hungry, they make better music, So first couple of albums of Daft Punk, they really changed something in the electronic music landscape.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. Daft Punk is amazing. And I took a lot of cues from their stuff. I think their older stuff it had this grungy kind of
Yeah,
feel, but like what I like the most is that they use things like and what was it? In Defunk by Daft Punk, they use
yeah,
a TB303, which is the same stuff that like Luke Vibert and Aphex Twin used to do their crazy esoteric and intense experimental music, and they use it in a way that's pop music, but like definitely not pop music.
yeah. I know what you mean. It gives that flavor, and it's really funny that we have all these new instruments that didn't used to exist, that were like like analog synths as we know now. I don't think they were supposed to do. They were made at the beginning to do something like they do now, like we do with them now. It's so interesting to have all these new instruments and new ways to make music, and of course, like, as you say, like a computer makes looping easier, and I kind of agree with that. It's much easier than with an old school like S2000 and stuff
Hmm.
like that. But at the same time, by making it easier, it allows you to explore further. Like I was right now, I'm playing a little bit with some mixes. So I got Tractor DJ.
Oh yeah.
It actually analyzed the key of the song. So that's something. Unless you had a very nice pitch recognition, you wouldn't be able to recognize right away as a DJ on vinyl. But since you have this on Tractor, you don't have to really worry about getting the tempo right, and it does everything for you. But you have more access to more information about the music. And I was thinking about, for example, all right, now it gives me the key, so I'm going to experiment trying to mix tracks that are a fifth apart or a
Hmm.
fourth apart. And you can kind of do things now with technology that, all right, it makes the core activity easier, but it will then allow you to explore much further into the and do stuff that wasn't able that you wouldn't be able to do on for example an old school 90s sampler.
Hmm.
So
Yeah, and I think that stuff's all really awesome. Like,
yeah, you can
the,
make it hard if you want.
oh
It's
yeah,
easy, but you can make it harder.
and I think the nice thing about music is that like you can shut off certain zones. Like when it comes to DJing and stuff, I closed that category off. I was like, all right, I could do DJing, but I'm gonna make all original live stuff. And I told myself when I go perform live, I
Mm.
will take my synths and I'm not just going to hit play. And I think that's when I got most into modular synth, is when I went through this phase. I was like, I hate just clicking
Yeah.
play. And I hate the thought of these guys going up on stage and just clicking play and then just like standing there. It's like, that's not a performance. I mean, anyone could do that in their own time. It's like,
When you perform live, it's not just about the music. I think
yeah,
it's like
it's a
people come to
performance.
you, yeah, and they expect to see a show and to have a different experience than if they were at home listening to the CD or
Yeah.
MP3 of your song. So
And I think the biggest part is that like you're the messing up. Like you're gonna mess up.
yeah,
That's why people are there, to
yeah,
see you perform. And I think that's what's interesting about it, is like when you click play and it's pre-recorded for the most part, and you
yeah,
have all these fail safes on there, like you're not really gonna mess up, you know. But if you take some of these safety nets off, then
yeah.
you have more chance to fail, but you also have more chance to change things.
And you have people just coming on stage with like modular synths, and they just start patching. The music just happens.
Yeah, that's
That's
what I
it.
loved. And that's when I started thinking about it. I was like, I went through, I think it was right after I made EDM Sucks. I was like, no, it would have been Tucson Forest recordings. I was like, all right, I hate that, the thought of going up on stage, because the only thing on my mind was, I'm going to start playing live. I'm going to start playing live. So I was like, how can I avoid clicking play? And I always had these modular synth people around and stuff, and I've had VCB Rack and Maxim SP, and I was like, all right, well, there's no play button on these at all. So I was like, all right, I'll get into this, and I started connecting with Jimmy Egger, who was not much help, but people like Richard Devine, who didn't respond much, but I kept bothering them and got little bits of responses now and then. And then people like who was it that talked to me a lot? Oh, Otto von Sirach. We talked a lot, and we still do talk a good bit. Amazing artist. I would definitely check him out. Um, we started talking about like music production and stuff and modular synths, and then just talking about it to other people. The idea, it was amazing, and then I started getting into VCV Rack, which was out then a little bit later, and it was like, okay, cool, but this is too open, too chaotic for me. I still like having a bit of control over it, so I can put my ideas in. Plus, it was new, and it wasn't my scene. But I think combining all the stuff together and giving it enough space that I have to play it live, like taking off the MIDI control for it, is what I want to do. Go up on stage and play my songs live so that the melody will be different.
Yeah.
But since it's the same song and I'll have the same feelings, I should be able to play something that meets it pretty well as well.
Yeah. It's just like if you're performing in a band, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Like you play a melody, but each time you play it, it's a little bit different. It's a little bit, or when you play a solo. But I was wondering, because I'm definitely contemplating, playing live, and I've had a few tries before, but I'm still struggling with to how to get the process going. Because I guess my question would be, what's your live setup, and how does it work? Like, what do you use for beat, for rhythm, for drums, for bass, and how do you make it work all together?
That's tough.
That's a tough one with electronic music.
I guess for me is, since I've I've got a lot of analog synthesizers, like more than I can even use, but I've never once had a real like analog, nice hands-on drum machine ever. Um, so I learned to make drum beats in Ableton on the fly live in the live editor as I go, so that I could do it now as fast as if I had a drum machine.
Yeah.
So I usually use Ableton as the hub, and then I'll use my synthesizer. It depends. Like if I'm going up on, if I want to do a ambient one, I'll take something probably like, I don't know, the little modular setup, Ableton, and then probably if I could a piano, like a real piano, and then a microphone, and then I would pick some kind of source to pull from, because when I do ambient work, it's always based off an acoustic instrument, because acoustic instruments only exist in the real world without being virtualized. So when you record them, you get some kind of distortion on them.
Yeah.
And that distortion, I just bring it out until it sounds like a piano overdriving itself without without overdrive, which I love the sound of.
Yeah, I guess it's funny, especially in ambient. It seems like very often you find a piano somewhere in there.
Yeah, and I think they have a nice sound. But I think for the biggest part with live is it's whatever I'm doing at the time, I guess. Like right now, I've got an upcoming show. I got that kind of show / talk next Thursday. Actually, I'm pretty nervous about. But most of my stuff recently has been sample based, so all I need is a MIDI controller, like a keyboard. So I'll go up there and I'll plug it in, and then for this one, it will be pre-recorded stuff, only because then I can talk about it. I mean, it's not everyone's going to be seated. It'll be at like an art gallery, so there won't be dancing. It's more of like, here's what I've done. So I was like, all right, this isn't a performance as much as it is, and it's called an intimate evening with Sound Psychologist. Yeah. So it'll be me talking about what I've done, and I mean the Ableton track, like for when I'm performing 20 hits, the project itself is changing every time I open it. I'll mess around with it. So when I get there, I'm gonna probably open it up, explain the different instruments in it briefly, and then show how they sound, and then kind of play through the song a bit, maybe extend it. But for my next show, it's in May. For that, I don't really know. Yeah, I haven't set it up, but I'll usually just take what I can, and what I can't, that's the limitations of it, and that will adjust it to the show. So if I can only take one keyboard, like my monologue, because it easily connects to the other stuff, then I'll just do a show with that, and it'll be revolving around that.
Oh, I guess that's interesting. But what about like, do you ever perform live? I guess you do, like songs from your album, or stuff that you actually work on recording and arranging, very very deliberate. And if you do so, like, how do you go about trying to emulate that, but by yourself, live?
Yeah, to be honest, I only ever play live usually around my house, or when I have people over. But it's honestly, it's the same thing. I don't get stage fright, and I'm a very shy, introverted person. But like performing and being in front of a bunch of people doesn't faze me in the slightest bit. So usually, what I'll do is I'll take a song, like something, and I'll delete something. I will either delete all the automation, or I'll delete the main, because if you analyze my songs, for the most part, the main melody, like the main synth, is just a big, huge solo. It's just one big thing. So I'll get rid of that, and then all the automation, and then I'll just play the big, huge solo throughout the song, and then everything else play along with it. Or else let me think of what I would do. I'd probably do like What I Mean to You or What You Mean to Me, same thing. For that one, I would probably open the song up in the studio and make a copy of it, and then pick something that I think characterizes the song but doesn't jeopardize it if I screw it up too much, and then I will make that bit live, and then the rest of it is already there. So,
and I think the fact that you have this interaction with the audience makes it so the music doesn't have to be exactly the same,
Hmm.
because you will find ways to connect with the audience that are not available when you're alone in your studio, I guess.
Hmm. And honestly, I hope no one shows up to the shows because then I can just play whatever I want. But um, uh, I'm not too, and then I can still say, yeah, I performed at this venue. It doesn't matter who showed up. Um, but I mean, I don't like playing live. I don't. The idea of it's cool. It doesn't fit my music, but I think it's one of those things that you nowadays. It's like on like when you're filling out the standard record label talk form, it'll be like, oh, where do you play live? It's like, oh, I don't have anything here. It's like, oh, okay, you're not good enough. Then it's like, okay, yeah, I've got this stuff that I did. They don't really care how good it went usually because there's not much stuff from it. But if you have proof you did it, that's really all they care about. And it's better money, but I really don't care too much about the money. Um, I don't know. It's just something I haven't done much, and it's something that is exciting. And I don't know. I find it interesting, but for the most part, I think my music will stay my music
Yeah.
because it's usually it just ends up being how I want it to be for the most part. Maybe who knows? Maybe I'll get up on stage and I'll just take an acoustic piano and just play whatever I want. I've always wanted to do this thing where I've had a stage and then a soundproof room and then
Mhm.
put a piano in there with a microphone and then have a bunch of reverb effects, tape delays and stuff running out and then the speakers. So I'm playing piano live, but you're hearing the edited, heavily
Yeah.
affected piano sounds coming out, but without any sense of the real piano.
Oh, that's interesting. That's an interesting take. But I'm let me just backtrack a little bit. Like, what makes you uncomfortable being on stage?
Um, that's a good question. I don't really know. I guess it's just I haven't done it much. I'm not too worried. I like to say that I'm not too. I could get up in front of like a million people on a stage like at Coachella and just do whatever I want. I wouldn't be too phased by it. I guess it's that my music isn't made for the masses. So
Yeah.
go performing for any sort of mass of people, it just is like it seems odd, but you know.
It's odd that you say it doesn't. It's not, because I understand why you say it, and I understand what it means. Oh, however, like how I see it, it's like a good movie. Like most people might not be able to appreciate it, like a very very good movie, a very deep movie. But if you give them a chance and the opportunity and a good context, they like most people might actually appreciate it. So
No, yeah, I completely understand why I want to play live, and I love the idea. I'm not used to it, but like if I get up on stage, when I mean, like playing live is totally different. And as I get better at it, I want it to become an experience that only exists there. I don't. That's why I don't want to play a lot of my old tracks, but I want it to be the people that were there got something unique and really. I don't know. Like
I think
I'm.
maybe you're overthinking this, because
Well, I think
when
part of my music, my view from it is the fact that I purposely overthink every part of it.
yeah, but it's probably good for the music itself. But about going on stage, like if you try to look at from the perspective, and maybe having been born in a musical household and with that much music around you, and like I think most people who don't go to live events often, the as you put it, like the masses, like they will go to an event and maybe they won't even really care about really the music, but the experience and the fact to see someone performing music, live music, it's how can I put it? It's engaging enough so that it helps them connect with the music. Like for example, like you have people who don't really listen to music that much, but then they see a music video that they like,
Hmm.
and they really like the music video, and then after that they start liking the song and maybe the artist. And but if it wasn't for that music video that they connected with, maybe you make them listen to that same song without the music video, and they say, oh, what's that bad music, and I don't like that. So I think it's a little bit the same about nice live performance, that people who come, they will connect with your music because they will connect with your performance. Seeing you on stage, actually, plugging patches and playing a synth and programming Ableton, on stage, and they don't understand. It's a little bit mysterious for them, and it's fascinating. It's stuff that most people cannot do. So they get engaged, and it's amazing. It's like when you go to a magic show,
Hmm.
something happening, and you connect with the event, you connect with the performance, but then it allows you to connect with the music. So
Yeah, no, I agree completely, and that's why I don't think I'm too shy of like getting up. Like if someone said, "Oh, hey, do you want to play guitar?" I'd be like, "Yeah, sure, no big deal." I'd be super excited because it would mean a lot for my music career. But like, I wouldn't be nervous about, oh, there's gonna be so many people, because I mean, they don't have to come to
it's
my
real
event.
work.
You know, they don't
You know,
have to come watch me. They can leave.
and as long as you're not, that guy sitting behind a laptop and
Yeah,
pressing play,
exactly.
you know, because that's what they don't get. Like these people, I'm not sure there are that many anymore, but what they may not be getting is that playing live, it's a lot about performing the music,
Hmm.
making it happen. You take an instrument, whatever it is. It can be a sampler, a PC, it can be a guitar, a piano. You take an instrument that's um, that's dead. That's dead wood basically, and you bring it to life.
Hmm.
Expertise, with mastery, with taste, and mm, I think most people will relate to that.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point. My one of my dreams have always been, if I always think about it from the perspective of, if I was already the biggest electronic musician in the world and ultra famous, I didn't have to worry about that. What would I do? And what I always thought would be cool is to go play a big show with nothing ready for it, no, and make all the songs live. Like,
You-
like if I owned the venue and I could make
yeah.
it as long as I wanted, I would get up on stage with like Ableton and a couple of my favorite producing gear, like synths and then a couple of compressors, and then just make an entire song or album up there. Just make it so that it's like really performing me making music live.
I know I probably told you about him, but are you familiar with Matthew Herbert?
I don't think so.
I send you some links. It's
Sounds
he's
good.
actually my favorite living artist right now,
Hmm.
and I used like and learned about him back when I was mixing house music, and I remember I was going to the record store, and there was always this special kind of vinyls with this logo, and it was Herbert, and it was very smooth, jazzy house, and I always enjoyed the music. And I've learned a little bit more about the artist. I'm not gonna, tell the whole story right now 'cause it's long. But basically, what he does when he performs, especially when he performs live like house music, that kind of stuff, dance music, goes in with nothing but empty samplers. He records like sounds from the audience before the concert, at the bar and stuff like that, and he
Right.
does the whole concert in nothing but those sounds. He
That's
actually
pretty great.
has many of his albums where everything, you hear like chords and melodies and everything, but everything is just random items sampled and looped and turned into synth.
Oh
And
yeah, I gotta hear that. I would love that.
almost definitely. And as said, like he's my favorite living artist right now, and he's been for maybe the last 15 years. Like I've
Hmm.
seen him perform live because he also has a jazz big band, but also semi-electronic live act, which is called Matthew Herbert Big Band, and I've seen it live
Hmm.
once, and I during the first track I actually cried, like the whole track. It was so beautiful. It's so amazing. track is named Turning Pages. Is the first track from his Goodbye Springtime album. Great music. It's quite difficult to actually find online, like on YouTube
Mhm.
and stuff like that. You can find some songs, but yeah, I'll give you some links, and
Sweet.
that's really great music and deep music. And he goes from house music, like old school house music, like what people call house music right now. It's has nothing to do with what I call house music.
Like Africa Bambaataa.
Yeah, and maybe not that old school, but the kind of yeah, because that's old school house, man. Um,
What about Larry Levin?
yeah, and basically, like you're familiar with the labels and stuff like that. When I used to DJ, I was really big into strictly rhythm, artists like Green Velvet, stuff like that.
Oh, right, right.
Um, it's it's already like maybe second, third generation of what one would call house music. And it's
Hmm.
funny because they used to say house music will never die, and it probably won't.
No, and I had a strange experience. I was at this hotel over break, and I was just sitting in the lobby. And I get there the first day I miss, and they've got like generic house music playing with like a 909 and just like a generic like little synth lead, maybe some samples. And I was like, oh yeah, cool. This hotel, they know good music. At least it's not like country music and Katy Perry. And I was like, cool. I went up to the hotel room, maybe fell asleep or something, or went out for a couple hours, came back, and there's still house music playing. I'm like, oh, cool. The entire time I was there, it was exclusively just house music, like 4/4 straight beat house music, and I was like, this is so weird, and it made me really realize that there is so much of just 4/4 bass, snare, bass, snare, bass, snare, and then straight 16s hi hats, and it's like there is so much of that, and it's not bad, but it's not good. Like it was not, none of it was ever like I would buy this. It was like it's just like house music.
I can have you listen to house music that will blow your mind.
Oh, I know I
But
love house music, but it was just such a strange realization. Like there's so much of it, and it's great. Like if I went to a club and they were just playing like that station, and if it had good bass and stuff, like that's great. It's a great environment, and it's crazy.
it's very I like the reason like how I understand house music. It's the perfect mix between the loop culture and electronic music. It's with more traditional kind of song structures. It depends on because you have many some genres of house music. It's always been like a connecting style of music between pretty much everything else.
Hmm.
It's always been some kind of hybrid, and that's some that I prefer to other, and I don't know. There's something about house music, and even though I'm really not familiar with what they call house music right now, and from what I've heard, it's pretty much EDM. But I'm
Hmm.
lost in all these new names because
Yeah, it flies by. I mean, the nice bit about what I do and what's cool is that like I know whatever music we make or put out, there'll be someone there for it. I mean, if country music's got a following, I mean, I guarantee anything will. So,
country music. Leave me
huh?
alone. I like country music. Leave me alone.
There is some of it that I really don't like, mainly the newer pop country stuff. It's just like,
Oh
but
yeah,
like
I'm
the old
talking mostly about old school
pop,
stuff with Eileen and
yeah,
and
yeah.
like vocals harmonized in thirds and very
Oh,
cliche.
I love that stuff. That stuff's great. I mean, like the new stuff that like teen girls would drive around in trucks listening to. That's, but
Yeah, the kind of like Christian country
yeah,
music.
that stuff's pretty horrendous. But
Some of it may be good. I don't really know, but you have this image
eh,
of clear, clean
yeah.
cut, like blonde girls and saying about Jesus, and it's a little bit cliche, and it's fine, I guess. It's
I mean, yeah, there's nothing wrong with it, but I think it's nothing new, and it definitely doesn't push any boundaries. So
not really like. I wouldn't say that. It might push some buttons on some people, but boundaries probably not. Like, but I guess it's fine. You have gangster rap. You can have Christian country music.
Yeah, which is weird because like in one day, I thought, well, it was yesterday. I had a strange realization. I woke up and then I was listening to like, what was it? Aphex Twin Milkman, which is super, super weird. And like, if anyone heard me listening to it, they'd be like, you are mental hospital. And then like halfway through the day, I was listening to Boards of Canada, which is warp. It's whatever. And then right after that, I was listening to like Mac DeMarco, and then back to some really hardcore ambient stuff. And then in the end of the day, I was listening to straight up like acid house. And then after that, I was listening to like was it Coolio or something, Gangster's Paradise in one day, and then some Radiohead. And I was like, okay, I listened to so many different years and genres and different people all in one day. And I was like, that's crazy cool.
It's crazy, like music and the eras of civilization. You have like I remember not that long ago, many people, like some people told me, oh, everything has been invented in music. There's nothing new to be done anymore. Yeah, right.
Which is weird because it always feels like that. Like it always does feel like there's nothing new, but like there is. There is, but it doesn't feel like it.
And whatever happens, it always kind of revolves around, established ways of making music one way or another. Like we talked the other day about harmonic series and how they are ingrained in nature, and we understand them naturally.
Mm-hmm.
Even completely new genres of music, like they work the same way. It's still music. It's always music, and it always works the same way. And it always brings us to that special connection with that special place that we tend to forget in everyday life. And I think this is why music is so important. It reminds us what it feels to be a human being, like a really complete, entire human being. Not only your job, not only your age and your sex and gender and whatever, but it calls to something so much deeper than everyday life, everyday mundane life.
Yeah, definitely. And I think part of the reason is that like I don't ever go too much into talking about my music or whatever, is that it doesn't really matter. No one really cares unless they care. And at that point, if they ask questions, I'll answer them. But like, unless I'm asked, I'm not. There's a couple artists that I'm not going to name names that are pretty big, that they just love posting about their music. Like, I've done so much. I have so many hard beliefs about it, and I think it's great. But like, no one cares. If no one's asked you, don't push it out there too much. But like,
I guess I like analyzing my music after, like a track after I finished it, maybe a few months after.
Yeah.
I try to understand exactly, like maybe not exactly, but I try to understand in retrospect what I was trying to say.
Mm-hmm. And usually, like when it comes to analyzing them, I usually understand exactly why I made them before I make them, and then I'll go in, make them out. But like going out there and it's weird, like being a musician, it wouldn't be socially acceptable to go around and just make different weird sounds, but like it's one of the biggest things that's accepted in society. Like, oh, that's just
throughout the world.
There's always music playing, and like, have you ever watched a music video? Have you ever watched a video of something and there's no music in it? It just is like, ugh. It's so hard to watch. Usually, like when I watch skateboard compilations, I'll put it on mute and then put on some like Jay Dilla or something.
Yeah.
It's so weird.
Huh. Yeah, but I guess it's real, especially when it comes to movie, and that's always baffling me. But I think we may have to thank Wagner for that. In movies, they play classic, like nobody, like not nobody, but most people don't listen, and most people will tell you that they don't like classical music. But in every movie, you have classical music, and nobody even cares, to
Hmm.
mention it. It's odd. It's odd. There's this thing with classical music,
Yeah,
and I think
about that.
Wagner did a lot to that.
Oh,
The
for
really,
sure.
yeah,
And like a big part of that, like I get that for sure. Is like I never ask people if they like country music, or I mean not country music, if they like classical music, because it's like it it's
the showstopper sometimes.
yeah, it's
Oh,
just
you
like
like
it's
classical music, huh?
and
Really?
it's everywhere, and like it's everywhere, but and I never liked the term classical music. I mean, I like the term like I don't know, symphonic music or specific, because there's stuff that's still composed today and that's like Hans Zimmer.
Yeah.
It sounds very classical, but it's a lot of it's synthesizers and violins and stuff, and it's like, all right, well, there's no difference. It's just composition based music or score based music, and it's everywhere. Everyone likes it because it just fits its place so perfectly. Because of the name, it's a composition, or it's a soundtrack, and when it's a soundtrack, it means it's a backing. It's not made to be center stage, so no one, unless
Yet
they're
it
really
is.
into it, it's just back there, and it does its job. And
Yeah.
usually, in my opinion, if it's not noticed by most people, it's good. But if it's noticed by people that it's really good because it's not interrupting the movie, then it's
Yeah.
really good.
Yeah. But I think like I I I wish I would be able, like, I'm gonna try someday to make music to the screen, to
Oh
maybe a
yeah,
video or something. But and people tell me, oh, your music sometimes sounds like movie soundtrack. You should do movie soundtrack. But what most people don't realize, if you just make music in your studio, you just make whatever comes, But if it's to a movie, you kind of have to be very deliberate, and
hmm,
also it has to sound natural. So it's very complicated. It seems very difficult to achieve that level of, like, when you mentioned Hans Zimmer, that level of mastery and beauty within the music, but within the context of the movie, of the scene, of it has to, like, even the tempo. You have to calculate your tempo, because this scene will last a few seconds, and you'll have maybe 30 seconds to play that kind of emotion. And you have to do it well,
yeah. I
and
mean,
it's
like
just not possible.
when I think about like Hans Zimmer and Junkie XL and what was it, Clint Mansell, I think about them and it's just like there's people like Beethoven, Bach, and Wagner and stuff. They do great, but they're so different than the like Clint Mansell and Hans Zimmer. They're so different, They Hans
Not that
Zimmer.
much, though. Like,
Well, they're different in the sense that Wagner did not have Batman to compose for. They didn't
well,
have.
I
They
think
did, but they didn't have it at this level. They're just and they make their own music, which is definitely comparable. But there's something about being there, sitting in a studio, making music for a movie as well. That's just it's so weird to think about, and it's such a small scene.
agree with Wagner, though, because Wagner mostly did operas, and he did everything, like the directing and everything for the opera. So it was, in a sense, like, when you really look, like, it's fine. Like, most people don't really look into Wagner, but he really introduced things that are now used in every movie, like the idea of leitmotif, that are like bam 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 bam. You instantly think Darth Vader, and the idea to associate a musical phrase with a character in the movie, because back then it was opera, because they didn't have movies, but it was opera. That came, like, Wagner didn't really invented it, but he really used it in a way that inspired all the, like, movie soundtrack today. Like, this is undeniable. And, like, many people, if you don't really like, you think, you have Wagner, you put Bach, you put Mozart, and but what like most of what Wagner did was opera, which is
Hmm.
basically like movies back then. So it really like really created the blueprint, and you can hear it right now if you're very familiar with Wagner, and you can hear the influence, especially like the most obvious to me. But I'm not really versed into soundtrack music, not as much as I would like to. But when you listen to John Williams, it's definitely
Oh
like
yes.
huge. Like you can listen if you appreciate John Williams, you will appreciate Wagner for sure. The
Who is
same.
another one? Whenever I listen to John Williams, I always think of a little bit of Wagner, but I like Stravinsky too.
Mm,
Stravinsky a lot. And another one, Holt.
yeah.
That the Planet Suite. That sounds so much like modern composition for film music. I hear it so strongly influenced in it.
Many of it is still used in movies right now today.
Hmm.
Oh, the ride of the Valkyries, da, 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 in
Hmm.
Apocalypse Now, and like modern music is very like I used to like I watched this movie a few years ago that I think the name was Birdman. It was a really
Oh, I love that movie.
so but you like the main theme is actually a Mahler piece from one of his symphony. I
You
think it's the
mean
ninth.
the Birdman, like the newer Birdman movie, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, okay. Yeah, I love that one.
Weird, psychological kind of uh, weird movie, but very nice movie. I don't
Hmm.
remember the actor, and I think it was Birdman. But yeah, and you have this very sad and melancholic theme, slow theme. That was Mahler.
Oh, really?
Yeah, like in
Hmm.
many movies, like like I really am a big fan of what they call romantic music. So that's basically from the mid eight um, 19th century up until say mid 20th century or early
Hmm.
20th century. So you have people like Liszt, Chopin, you have Wagner, you have Mahler, Bruckner, you have Ravel, people like that. So it's rather complex music when you look into it, but when you listen to it, it's very simple, very narrative music. It tells a lot of stories and very dramatic music. And
Hmm.
I'm a big fan of this era of music, romantic and neo-romantic music. It's just like I like to call my own music like romantic dance music, like a little bit of trolling of EDM, IDM, and whatever DM. So mine is RDM, romantic dance music. But yeah, it's not
That's a
romantic.
cool idea,
It's just you know, it's different.
yeah.
It's yeah, it's but I guess the point where I was getting at is music evolves and you have new styles, new genres of music, and but in the end, it's always the same thing. Like even the techno, hardcore techno loops, you can trace them back to probably the first humans, you know, hitting pieces of wood together and dancing around the fire somewhere, in the jungle or something. And it's the same principle. It's the same idea. It's that connection that's maybe older than humanity itself, you know,
Hmm.
because music exists within nature. And it exists within, within ourselves. We have a heartbeat. We have a breathing pattern. We see colors, which are frequencies, and we see harmonies. And we always say like, even when you have a good relationship with a person. I don't know if it's said often in the English, but you say we're on the same wavelength.
Oh yeah, we say
You know,
that.
people
Oh
say
yeah.
that naturally, and like it really means something.
Hmm.
If you can recognize harmony, I think you can recognize harmony and patterns. You can recognize harmony and patterns within music, but also sometimes within people and within. It can be markets. It can be trends. You know, it's
Yeah, for
all like
sure.
from my perspective, and maybe I'm wrong, but from my perspective, it's all music. Like I really like doing business and to me, it's the same as doing a business and doing a song. It's the exact same thing. I go up at the same level.
Yeah, definitely. Uh, yeah.
So I guess an hour and a half. That was cool.
Yeah, definitely.